operation on this nice brand new helmet. And you could definitely just leave it the way it is, you know, because it's nice and clean, nice and perfect. So if I just leave it in this white, smooth white finish, I could do a clear coat and I could just do the decals for the gray areas and it would look really nice. I mean, it would look like the Battle of Endor hadn't happened yet. And what I like to do is make sure that for the scout helmets I make, that the Battle of Endor has occurred. And so I want for the helmets to have some kind of scoring and some kind of marking that could also be somewhat screen accurate to the Return of the Jedi. And in this case, I took it a little bit further where, I don't know, I hope you can see these details. There's like a little bit of crackling. This will pop more. I think you can see it there. Yeah. It looks like a little bit of erosion. And what that is putting a water-based paint down and then putting a enamel paint over it. So the enamel paint will kind of dry at a different speed than the water-based paint, and you'll get left with these cool effects, these sort of crackle effects. And then I've gone back and sanded this a bunch of times and repainted a bunch of times. And the back piece has some crackle effect as well. I don't know if you can see that, but you will, because we're going to put some black paint on this. Okay. All right, let's see. Myself a glove here. So yeah, we're going to put some black paint right onto this nice white, freshly made helmet. And, you know, I want all of my helmets to be different, you know, to have a story. And so I don't, as much as I'd kind of like to leave the helmet at this stage. Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, hello, welcome to this live. So without much further delay, what I'm going to do is just start putting this water-based black acrylic paint onto this helmet generously. Now, when I do this, I'm going to want to have some cotton rags, not paper, because paper will leave little fibers behind, and that will ultimately mess with you, because after you do the weathering, you'll probably want to do a clear coat, and you just don't want a clear coat over paper fibers. And so just use cotton rags like an old t-shirt and cut it up. I've also got a bucket of water right here. And what the bucket of water lets you do is get one of your rags really wet and just back out completely, like wash off a lot of the black paint. Maybe you put on too much and you're like, oh my gosh, I ruined it. Just use the bucket of water to just back out completely. And that's going to work, because at this point, this helmet is very plastic. It's very plastic-like. This paint is oil enamel, you know, it's really good, and it's super dry. So you can get this thing really wet. And so when you're weathering, you just kind of have to go with the flow. And I'll probably, you know, I'll go back and I'll do these guys with the gray, and I'll probably do, you know, add some gray details, some stuff like that. But right now, the next step, after making it so perfect and clean, the next step actually is to get it really dirty and then try to go back to getting it clean. So let's do this. Hey, welcome. All right. Well, before I start doing this messy process, I want to show you some drawings I did recently. Here we go. Here's a drawing I did. It's like using Sharpie markers and colored pencils and stuff. It's some kind of armored vehicle from the future, I guess. regardless of what you draw, as a professional metal worker, I've always tried to teach my students that um, welding is a lot like drawing, because when you're welding, you have to make these perfectly straight lines. So when I'm teaching people how to weld, I'll ask them like, do you draw stuff? Like, are you into drawing stuff? And if they're not, if they're like, oh, I don't draw stuff, then they might not be a good welder. So it's true as well for any kind of stuff. You should, doesn't matter what you draw, but you should just give it a try. I think these are some vehicles, little sketches of like futuristic anime cars that I like to do. So if I'm on the phone or if I'm just in studio for a little bit, I'll totally do a bunch of drawings. But I've got quite a lot of these sketches. Let me see if I can show you some fan art here. Here we go. So I really like Yoshihisa Tagami, who does the Gray series of manga comics. And he also did some other ones, but he's better known for the Gray manga. It's so cool. So I just love the way he draws faces. So I'm trying to learn how to draw this anime face in the style of Yoshihisa Tagami. He's the bomb. And honestly, this is just fan art. It's just like the world of Gray, or like the world of Appleseed, or you can kind of go up the ladder to get to the more better known sort of manga comics. Honestly, my first experience with Alita Battle Angel was with the comics that were really cool. All right, so let's get down to this. And I've seen the Alita anime movie too that came out back in the day. That's all right. But the ninja guy, it's actually pretty good as an interpretation. Like, it's maybe the Studio Ghibli does the best interpretations for sure. Believe it or not, there's check it out. There it is. Hey, who knows what the name of this part is? Hey, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry that you don't feel good. I hope you enjoy this. Hopefully this can make you relax and feel better. So there's the mask. Nice and clean. So here we go. I'm going to get a rag and put some water on it to get that just kind of ready to go. It's like an airplane flying around outside. I'm going to get the helmet moist before. Hopefully I can just get a bunch of water on the lens. But basically, the weathering is going to be more of a water-based process. Mainly I'm using this just cheap house paint, this black house paint. But of course, I can also cheat with some of these nicer brown colors that are just amazing. And these go a really long way. Although, yeah, just maybe for some highlights, to make the not just only black weathering, but something that has more like kind of a desert sand, kind of, or rust maybe. But honestly, the black scoring is really good for stormtroopers, I think, because it is what blaster marks look like. And okay, so we've just got a big ugly brush, and I'm just going to go straight into it here. Here's the helmet getting bombarded. So I've used other paints, like I've used model paints for this, and it's not a bad idea. Honestly, it's just that you'll spend more money. This is like a pretty good amount that you can get from any hardware store. It's not a pint, it's like a quarter of a pint or something, but it's only like $4. and it goes a really long way. All right, so here we go. All right, it's like, oh no, he ruined it, right? I hear you. I hear you. But here's the wet rag to the rescue. Okay, now watch what happens. Ooh. Okay. And I'm going to make a mess here. That's kind of why I'm on the messy table. It's the nice thing about studio. You can make a mess. So I'm just going to use this wet rag to move the black around that I just kind of swabbed on there with the brush. And believe it or not, later on when this dries, you can even just sort of sand back into it and really erase it. But that's not the goal here. The goal here is to, get some nice sediment. And what we're doing here is called weathering, to weather the prop. Now, I was thinking about a point I wanted to make about weathering props in a way that's like going to work, or in a way that's going to be satisfying. And of course, there's a lot of techniques, regardless of what technique you're using. Think about it in a couple ways. Think about it like weathering the helmet should be a visual process where I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, that looks good, that looks realistic. So yes, that you should do that. But then when you see that on camera, it won't look great. You'll think, oh, I thought it looked better than that. So you have to take it to a slightly other level for it to look good on camera, which I would say is cartoonish. And a good example of that would be all that dark paint that has built up in here now. See that? This is really good. It doesn't look realistic in person, but it's this kind of cartoonish dark paint that gets down in the shadows. And then it becomes like a painting in of the shadow that you'll see in a more like sort of cartoonish drawing. So as you can see, I've actually been able to wipe off the vast majority of that black paint. And it's interesting, it's kind of attacking certain areas a little different, where the finish on the paint is a little different. And that's okay, I'm just gonna go with that. What I really don't want to happen is for any of the print lines to show up, honestly, because print lines will kind of take me out. I have a lot of patience, of course, for projects that have print lines. I think it's cool when people can print something and just take it right off the printer, and not have to clean it up. That's cool. But with a cosplay helmet that could be used on camera, then you can't have any print lines in it. And the funny thing is, like, when I watch The Mandalorian, or any, like, if I watch Andor or any of like the new Star Wars stuff, I am constantly looking at the pieces to see if there's print lines. And if I ever get better at like editing videos and stuff, maybe we could try to do like a video about all the times in Disney Star Wars where you can actually see print lines on the props. Because there's a couple that I've seen. I know others have seen as well. And that's, you got to go easy on people. It's like they're trying, I think they're doing a pretty good job overall with the physical props are pretty good. It's like the writing isn't good, but it's like you try not to blame the actors for the bad writing, Okay, what do we got? Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So I'm making a scout helmet, and the clue is sort of in the name of the channel. So look, I just put a bunch more black paint right on the front. Okay, and now you'll see after I wipe it with a cotton rag. And this is real, like, not toxic at all. This doesn't smell bad because this is all just water-based acrylic. So I wouldn't do this with enamel. Honestly, that to me is all a spraying process. I don't really, because if you're trying to do this weathering effect with an enamel paint, I wouldn't want to do that because you can't use water on this rag to thin it out. You'd have to use some kind of toxic chemical. So, no thanks. Actually, on the inside of the helmet, I don't use spray paint because I don't want the actor to have to smell that spray paint smell. And that'll stay in the helmet for a long time. And then if it gets hot, that spray paint smell a bad paint smell will come back out, So, those guys put up with a lot of shit. One thing I've seen in a lot of the Disney Star Wars is helmets not fitting correctly. And it seems like they're just buying helmets on the internet, practically. It's like, I can tell you one thing for sure is that Disney Star Wars uses local shops here in Los Angeles to create the helmets in the series. And you can tell there's like a difference in quality sometimes in the helmets in Mandalorian. And like if you look at the Scout helmet, you'll notice that it's okay, but that's from a prop shop. Anyone can buy that actually. And I don't think it's really fit correctly, and it's really not anyone's fault. It's not the actor's fault for sure. The thing is, the original actors who played Scout Troopers are very short, extremely short, like professional skateboarders. Like they're like 5 feet tall. So you can't go getting like a 6 foot tall actor to go put on an original, Lucasfilm prop like that because it's going to be way too small. So so that's what it looks like to me in The Mandalorian. Like those guys are they should have printed the armor themselves and scaled it up, which is what I have to do with armor. When I print arms or bicep pieces, I have to, hey, what's up? Hey, can we order from you? Not yet. I'm trying to set up a Squarespace store. I'm not on YouTube partnership yet, so I can't have a buy button yet on my channel. So maybe someday. Let's see here. So if I see some black paint that is maybe too, just not to my exact liking, or I just want to even it out a little bit, then you get a wet rag and just kind of use it like an eraser and like a blending tool. Just kind of blend it in. And of course, just get that black paint back on there and just get a bunch of fresh black paint on there. And the thing I can tell you one thing for sure about weathering is to be generous. There's a lot of different ways to weather the pieces, of course. And today, honestly, I'll be really happy if I can just get the front part looking good. I'd be happy. If I can get the whole piece looking cool, then that's great. And ultimately, when the weathering dries totally, you can go back and clear coat it. Make it shiny or clear coat it with matte. It looks really nice. All right. Okay. So yeah, this is nice. It's like I'm getting some dark buildup in these cracks in the front, which I really like when there's this kind of carbon buildup inside the helmet. Looks really sweet, honestly. God, I love it. I mean, it's hard emotionally to take such a nice clean piece and forever make it dirty. And then after I clear coat this, it'll be totally dirty. I mean, you could, I guess, go back and repaint it, I don't know. The thing is, though, it's like you can purchase a Scout helmet from Mattel or from Disney and stuff, and you can also purchase Scout helmets from other builders like myself. And a lot of times, what you're going to get is a really nice, clean Scout helmet. You know, which is cool. They're nice. I have a couple that are like nice and clean. You know, I made a Scout helmet for my son and a body kit, and he wanted it to just be super clean and shiny, like from when they're still on the Death Star. You know, before the Battle of Endor. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. Try to do a little bit of dry on it. Okay, now it's showing up better. All right, so this is that scoring I talked about that I put into the paint to try to get a blaster mark effect and to take the weathering also just to give it like a crack effect. And it looks really nice. Okay, so like let's say for example, I don't like these marks, okay, because they're too painterly. Just go back with your wet rag, just water, you know, it's not paint thinner or anything like that. Like that's why this is an important to do as a water-based paint step, and because that way you can feel free to use a rag and to dilute the paint on the surface of your piece. You know, I mean, if you're getting paid a ton of money and it's for something really insane, then yeah, you could be doing this with automotive enamel paint, but I'd have to have a huge respirator, and this rag would be extremely toxic and flammable, you know, to even just think of throwing it away. So, you know, for the most part, the weathering step is going to be a water based process. And I have a lot of control over it that way as well. You know, some people try to do like directional spray, and you know, they try to use decals, or they use the little bits of you know, there's all kinds of ways to do weathering, you know, but honestly, check it out, not bad. So I just keep adding black where I see that I could kind of use a little. Let me go back in here, back in those vents up there. And just like in a cartoon drawing, consider painting the underparts where there would be a shadow normally, just kind of like how in a comic book you'd see a black, you know, very dark shape that would represent a shadow that was cast on something. Consider drawing the underside of things with a cartoon shadow just to further enhance the appearance on camera, basically. And also just from a distance, you know, like if you're way up on a stage and people can't see you because that well because they're not close, you kind of want your weathering job to really be a little cartoonish is okay. I would say a little cartoonish. Whoa, this looks so cool. All right, now I have to be a little careful about not messing it up. But there's all right. Let's get in here. So far, I've applied paint to the helmet overall. I'd say about 5 times, and wiped it back off. Getting the helmet wet initially is really important because that way the paint doesn't kind of instantly dry, and then you don't start to get peeling when you're trying to wipe it off. So you want the paint to kind of hit onto a wet surface so it's ready to be basically ragged off for the most part. So, which is what a lot of this is. This is like basically a process of getting it super filthy And okay, so do you think I should add a little bit of brown to this? Should I do a little tiny bit of brown on this, on the face piece? All right. Just kind of get this guy all evened out. This is really good. Okay. Yeah. I think, in these Scout helmets, there's some really nice little details that just really pop when you weather the helmet. So, excuse me. Drink a little water here. Yeah. So, I said to do the weathering like it's a fake shadow. Like, make sure the areas that would have shadow should be really dark. So in the same way, you can buff out areas that you want to be like a fake highlight, so to speak. So I go back in with my clean rag, and any kind of like leading edge or kind of front piece that would have sort of sunlight hitting it, I'll try to clean that up, kind of buff that out. And I think what that simulates is, the weathering getting kind of worn off, from contact with stuff. But what it also does is creates like a false highlight, which looks cool, just in person and from far away, and it looks good on camera. It's not necessarily, it's not totally necessary, but it is kind of like part of the craft would be to insert a false highlight on a certain piece of armor, or to polish up or push up the colors in a piece of the prop that you wanted people to notice. Yeah, so in this case, I went back through with a dry rag. We've got this really nice daylight here that's kind of showing this off. And with the dry rag, I can really clean up these corners and just make them more shiny, almost as if light was hitting them. So let's compare this. And I'm trying to decide if I'm 100% okay with this, or if I could say I'm done at the moment. I like all the dark, grime getting down in here. It just really helps blend in the snout to the rest of the helmet. It really needs it. I really like how this part of the snout looks. I think I'm just gonna pull a little more out of these details on the top here. Just put some black paint all over it. And then let's see, just wipe it off. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes you'll feel like you've made a mistake, or you feel like things aren't going great or whatever. And it's just like, you just have to keep working on it, just have to keep trying. And ultimately, the helmet itself just might not be the one, it's just not gonna be. It's like your first or your second helmet is not gonna be like amazing. It takes a little while, and you'll be conservative at first. But in this case, I made a giant mess on this helmet, and I think I've been rewarded. If you compare this to look at that. This is the back piece to the helmet, and it's not weathered at all, but we're gonna weather it now, because look how this came out really good. Oh yeah, I really am very happy with this. Oh yeah, and it didn't really pull out any print lines that I can see anywhere. Mainly I've just got some brush lines, from the moisture of the paint, kind of dabbling. Let me see if I can kind of blend that out a little. A lot of times going in circles is going to help, like if you're sanding, go in circles. If you watch my other tutorials, I'll definitely say that. So in this case here, I'm kind of blurring out some of the features, from the weathering, and I'm just doing that by adding a bunch of circles. And the goal here is to get these edges moist so I can, let's see here, nice. So I can use a dry rag and get, like I said, get a fake highlight, okay? So like right here, there would probably be a highlight. So I'm just gonna take the dry rag and just make it super clean while this black stuff is still wet. Black stuff, the paint, the black paint. Here we go. Boom. All right. It's subtle, but you'll see later. Looks cool. I'm going to do it on this edge up here as well, on all these leading edges. Yeah. Okay. I feel like the top might be a little splotchy, so I'm just going to go same thing, just do a bunch of circles. And honestly, the top would have a lot of sun exposure and like rain exposure and whatever if you're on indoor. So it would probably be pretty clean, pretty white. So ultimately, what you can do once the weathering dries, give it a little while, and if you can, get it outside in the sun so that it can warm up and the water can get away. Then you can sand back through it, and it really pops the edges. So I might do that on here a little bit just because it's kind of irresistible to get that effect. All right. And this piece has no deadline, so there's no like big hurry. I just see a little mark here that I'm not crazy about. Let's get that. Sometimes you'll see like little marks that draw a little bit of attention to a certain area, and you're like, no, I don't really want to draw attention right now to that little spot, You're just kind of like, doop. Just kind of go in there and gray it out. All right. And then get back in with the rag. All right. All right. Hey. Oh, how many helmets have I made? Thank you so much. That's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for that comment. How many helmets have I made? I think I've made about like just random IP helmets that were for other jobs, probably, I don't know, a dozen, more than that. Sometimes it's just like a modification or it's like a scratch built prop and stuff. And then, but for myself, what I have built a lot lately are these scout helmets. I just personally like the scout helmet the most from the original Star Wars. There's, and there's just a lot to it that you can kind of go on. And I'd love to try to do some videos that go over some of the lore of the scout helmet. I have a few videos on my channel that you can check out, but there's other channels that have lore, about the scout troopers too. And I wasn't even really planning on like sharing it as a part of my YouTube channel, but it's just been interesting to see how a lot of people liked stormtroopers. I mean, what's not to like? And just for myself, I have the skills to make this. And now that I'm a little older, I'm like 50 years old now, so I've got a little time on my hands. And if I ask myself like, oh, what would be a cool hobby, it would be, well, if I think about a skill I already have, it's making props basically. So yeah, And so I'm not terrible. I'm not like the worst person in the world at making Star Wars helmets, but some of my helmets are not great because I experiment. I try things that I believe in the idea of learning from, like when you're in the process of learning, part of that is doing something mistakenly or doing something in a way like you think is going to look cool, but then doesn't. And you kind of go back in your head and you're like, oh, that's what it's like when I'm doing it in a way that I'm not going to end up liking. So then in the future, when you're having that same thought pattern, you can sort of catch yourself and be like, wait a minute, you think this is going to look good, but maybe it's not going to look good. So with experience, you can divert yourself from making mistakes, but that's only by making a bunch of mistakes. And so it just doesn't, I don't think it's a good idea to like grow up and get good at something and have that mean that now you're not going to make mistakes. That doesn't, I don't want that to be true. So I want to keep making mistakes and learning from my mistakes, of course. But in this case, I think I'm on the right track. I really like how these blaster marks here on the front lip there, on the visor, they're pretty subtle, but you can see those. It's a little bit of depth in the paint. I've got those on both sides here. And those are cool. Darn it. I wish those would have come out darker, honestly. So let's see if we can make that happen. So just, again, taking some black paint here, and we're just going to flood the area that we want with the black paint, and then get back over there. And in this case, I'm going to start out with a dry rag, just so I don't wash it off too much. And then just to kind of, if I feel like I need to blend it out, because it's too much, then you can always come back with a wet rag and just clean it up. Start over. All right, so here you can see, it doesn't look very great, but I'm hitting it with a dry rag. Really trying not to clean out that crevice is what I'm really going for here. All right, that's not terrible. And then to just sort of blend it in, I'm gonna go at it with this wet rag and do circles. All right. Okay, I like how that's looking right there. Okay, yeah. Anyway, that kind of brought it out a little more, this blaster mark. Yes. So now this Scout Trooper has a lot more character, than your average everyday Scout Trooper helmet that would be really clean. And I've tried combining this very weathered helmet with weathered armor. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But on the Scout Trooper, it just works great because it's such simple armor. There's not a lot of detail to it compared to other armor kits. And so if you weather, like if you do heavy weathering on a Halo helmet or a helmet that has a lot of detail, it can become too busy. Whereas the original Lucas helmets, when you weather them, one thing you notice is that large areas of the helmet are flat and blank, or they're just a simple shape. And this is true for all of the original Stormtrooper helmets, including the Boba Fett design as well. Something I've talked about on my videos a little bit is what the secret guiding principle is that George Lucas used on the original trilogy Stormtrooper designs. So he worked with different designers on the different movies. There are some common features that you'll see throughout a lot of the stuff in Star Wars, but certainly the Stormtrooper helmet designs. And it's not something that is like, you know how George Lucas has said that the original Star Wars movies are meant to be epics, and they're sort of based on these ancient stories that have symbology in them. So we can get into the lore of like the technology of a stormtrooper helmet and why various helmets over the years would have similar features and shapes. And we could come up with a kind of technological lore for that, right? Or a cultural lore. But if you take this a step further, I can show you in this helmet. It's dead center on the scout trooper. Okay, just look at this shape right here of the snout. Okay, take a little divergence here. Now it looks like an arched doorway, doesn't it? Now I don't have any other helmets here to show you, but the Boba Fett helmet has this exact same shape on the side. The other helmet, the stormtroopers have the also the same shape on the side. Okay. Now this shape is one of the secrets. It's one of the secret design conventions that George Lucas had all his helmet designers, his stormtrooper designers, put in there. But it's also in the sets. Okay. But where does it show up for the first time? Okay, this is really key. What is this shape? What is this shape in the Star Wars universe? Does anyone want to throw me a guess? Yeah, very deep in meaning. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, the first movie is very deep in meaning, true, and symbology. But can you try to think about where's the first time in A New Hope where this shape appears? It's not on a droid, it's not on a stormtrooper, it's Luke's homestead. This is the doorway to the place where Luke grew up. Watch the movie, you'll see what I mean. And if you have, you remember now. And it's the place where Luke saw his aunt and uncle slain by the stormtroopers, right in front of that doorway, right? You know I'm right. So Lucas was putting this shape all through the movie in hiding it. It's not a technological thing. It's a symbol. It's almost like saying, yeah, the lightsaber is cool because it's technology and it's a laser sword and blah, blah, blah. It's Excalibur. It's the magic sword, period. It's a symbolic of something. It doesn't matter what it looks like. What it looks like is to be symbolic of that thing. So that's what this is here, this shape. Also, it's cool because it's like frowny and it is architectural. So it kind of does make the helmets look really sick. But I know this is one of the things. So I just have this theory. All right. So I haven't read this anywhere and I'm not sure if this is true or not. But I've made several different Star Wars helmet styles and I've noticed this all throughout the designs. Is this. There's some other rules too that the helmets follow and that all Star Wars spaceship designs also follow. Some very interesting rules. One that I would call the simple, complicated, like make patches that are complicated. Now make a patch that's simple. Now make a patch that's complicated. Now make a patch that's simple. It's almost like how Gundam is drawn. You know, make a patch that's a simple shape. Okay, now make a spot that's really complicated. You know, you let the imagination of your viewer kind of run away with what that means. But if you look at other space movies, it's like the ships are just all complicated, and it doesn't look good. So you can see where George Lucas had a couple rules to help make things look cool. But this is the one to me that's like that hits so hard is the idea that this shape that appears over and over throughout the movie props and the sets is actually the doorway of Luke's homestead. And what is that doorway? What is it? It's a portal, right? It's where Luke became like a kid from being a man or something. But a doorway is a portal, right? So it's very strange. Or and it's I thought, okay, it's like an arched window, or it's like an archway. It's like, no, it's not that loosely based. This is every single time you see this in Star Wars, it represents Luke's homestead. It also lets us know that we're in the Star Wars universe, right? So it sounds weird, but people seem to like Star Wars a lot. So it's like, if you want to make something and you want people to like it a lot, you know, maybe try to figure out your own way to interpret that strange set of rules, for whatever you're doing. Have something about the shape of, like, I don't know, but wouldn't it be weird if it like turned out in the Wizard of Oz that like Dorothy, like her farm that she grew up on, like it turned out that like the evil witch had like a hat that was like the shape of the barn or something. So it was just like this repeating motif, that was like reminding Dorothy, like, you really want to get home. You really want to get home. I don't know. Do you think that's what it is? Do you think this symbol from Luke's homestead is like this idea that Luke ultimately wants to repair his household, so to speak? It's also the site where that trauma occurred, though. All right, let me look at my wonderful comments here. This is so lovely. Thank you so much. I kind of see it. Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, you have a great day. Have a great day, bro. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for your subscription. That is so epic. Thank you. Wow. Well, I hope that these videos can be useful. I've decided to go onto this live format just because, honestly, I've been working so much lately. I've been doing a lot of metal work lately. And I've been driving different parts of Los Angeles and doing welding and building some pretty fun metal things. I'd say it's been okay. Some sculpture, some art, and some other stuff that's more normal. But so I haven't had the time to like really shoot the videos I want to shoot. But this is work that I really want to do, and it's like just for my own collection. And I think I'll probably sell this helmet as well, eventually, hopefully. But if I sell this helmet, it's going to be to somebody who really likes. They might already have a shiny helmet, and they just really want like an Endor, a helmet that has the Endor damage from the Battle of Endor. There's also a scene in Return of the Jedi where the Ewoks are playing drums on the Stormtrooper helmets, and one of the helmets is a Scout helmet, and that thing is so grimy. It's like on a pole in this Ewoks book, and it is just so weathered and grimy. And I've really tried to take a good look at that, screenshot from the movie, and just like, man, I really want to make a Scout Trooper helmet that is just so grimy that it's literally like the drum that the Ewoks have been busting out their music on the Stormtrooper helmet. All right, I'm sorry. The text on these notifications is so small that, and then we'll do the top of the helmet. I just want to make sure I'm great. Hello, welcome. Oh, thank you. Vortex Vision is here. Hello, mate. Hello, welcome to one of my live streams. So, guys, if you just joined recently, just a recent little bit, what I've been doing is weathering this front piece to a Scout helmet. When we started, it was all nice and clean, and now it's not. And so now what we're going to do is get the back part to match the front part. So to compare, I mean, with the weathering really brings out the details, it's also going to show if there's still a lot of print lines, it's going to show that a lot. So you do have to make sure that your piece is pretty smooth, pretty sanded out. And you could just have really thick paint and sand that. You don't have to like be sanding the print itself, honestly. But if you start rubbing the weathering on and there's print lines, it'll make those pop out like you're taking a rubbing almost of it. So what we want is for the texture to pop. So we got that here with that texture. We got this texture to pop. And then I did this damage to the paint here, this kind of crawling pattern or blaster mark, which didn't get as dark as I'd like, but you can see that one there. So let's do the back piece. Put this over here. Now, this part of the Scout helmet is very interesting. This part here is the life support. Okay, this whole piece here runs life support. And this whole top piece here is mainly armor. The Scout helmet for the Scout Trooper has excellent protection, top-down protection. Same thing with the front. It does have the blast shield around the lens that provides awesome top-down and side blast protection. And to just kind of round that out and complete that, the Scout helmet has a really nice dome piece that is literally just a very thick, heavy armor plate. There's really not any tech in the dome. But the back part here, the life support, has a lot of tech in it. He's got some large vents on the side here. And so I'm guessing that a Scout Trooper, if he or she is struck in the life support area, that's not going to go well, right? Interestingly, on the Scout Trooper, all this life support is in the back, which is smart if you don't want it to get shot, because generally, like a tank has thicker armor on the front, and it would have put the weak business, like the engine, in the back. It's not going to get hit. So you have to give it to Lucasfilms. Like, they're just so cool how they evolve stuff, right? So the Scout Trooper keeps most of the weak stuff in the back of the helmet, where it's less likely to get hit. And the front of the helmet, which I just cannot say enough about, is just almost entirely ballistic. The cheeks are like ballistic armor plates. They're angled to direct frontal shots away. While the forehead area is like a skull, it's more like a living being. And then it comes down here to this very robotic, and very little of the ballistic armored area is spared to present the communications area, right? Very important. Extremely cool. Can't say enough about the Scout Trooper helmets. All right. All right, so you guys ready to do the back of this and make it all dirty so we can actually see the details better? If you have some water, if you have a beverage, please drink it. Please wish me luck. Let's hope this goes okay. I think the front went great. I'm really happy with it. So again, what we do is we have a bucket of water right here. I'm going to get a rag, really wet. We're just going to go ahead and get this whole piece wet. We already know that we're going to make this whole thing a terrible mess before we're done. Before we're done, this whole thing is going to be a terrible mess, I guarantee you. You'll be saying bye-bye to that nice clean-looking helmet. But wait, look. Because I have this nice enamel paint that's nice and smooth, it's very plasticky, I can clean it off really well. So you can always, with weathering, with water-based weathering, you can get stuff really, really, I would put on a lot of your weathering. Like if you're doing mud, like just put it all on, like cover it completely, and then just do a cleaning process this way, right? All right, so here we're gonna actually slather on some black paint. Here we go, nice, just latex. It's exterior house latex that It's just the darkest black, and it's matte black. So you could also use a nice model paint for this, get a nicer black that has maybe better pigment. When I wipe this stuff off, this is just like from Home Depot. It's really affordable. It's like $4 for that. For I can't even get a tiny bottle of this for $4. And then I could go through easily a whole bottle of that, trying to weather a helmet. So that's not going to work. At least not for a hobby project like this. I think it, you're going to spend a lot of time on something, but it's like, part of the fun is not spending a ton of money. So if you could go from spending like $20 on paint to like not even, like this has lasted a long time. I've probably weathered 4 helmets so far with this. I could probably do like 4 more helmets. It's like, what is that? 25 cents per helmet versus like a $7 little bottle of paint. So, other stuff you can't really control the cost, like the enamel paints are just more expensive. All right, so now you can see how the paint is getting our details to pop, which is exciting. And yeah, that looks terrible, of course, but we're not done. Sometimes when you're weathering, you can panic because you'll feel like you're ruining your piece, that you've just got it out, you've gotten it so perfect. And, yeah, you should make things that are perfect and nice. Everyone wants that nice, clean Stormtrooper helmet. But once you've got the nice, clean Stormtrooper helmet, then don't you want to have like the cool Sand Trooper helmet that's all dirty, and eventually what happens is you start to fall in love with the idea that each helmet is a specific individual. And I think this is why some artists like to paint portraits, or cartoonists get pleasure from drawing characters. It's like you're bringing somebody to life, like you're bringing a specific character to life. And so, I like for the idea that each Stormtrooper helmet at this point is a very specific Stormtrooper. That at the very least means that they have a very specific, in The Mandalorian, they go crazy with making everyone's design different. But one way you could just give a Stormtrooper a lot of individuality is with the Sand Trooper. You just give them a very recognizable weathering finish. And now all of a sudden it's like a very specific character. All right, so I think I'm going to have to kind of hold it on the back there. And I'm going to let this process, darken the ear ports in a lot, and probably I'll just use the brush to paint the whole inside of the helmet black, because using a water-based paint on the inside of the helmet is gonna just smell. Oh my god! I think I have a little bug is flying on my glasses. If you spray paint. If you spray paint on the inside of the helmet, in a way, it's going to condemn anybody who's wearing that helmet to have to smell that smell of spray paint, especially if it gets warm. So I'm just going to kind of go back over this helmet and re-wet everything, because this is a big piece, and as you're going around and weathering it, the other side will get all dry, and you'll be like, oh my god. So you got to go around, keep it wet, keep it going, because I'm not done yet with this. I want to get, see, there's this crack along the top here that I really like that to have a pronounced, at this point it's a shadow, As I said, when you're doing the weathering, think of it as also a cartoonish shadow line where you're inserting darkness into an area that, if it was a comic book drawing, would also be dark, like the inside of the ear, for example. Now, the Scout Trooper in Return of the Jedi, his ear is pretty dark, but only if you go back a little bit. There's like this really nice insert for the Scout Trooper ears that I need to print some of those or make some of those because they're really a nice detail. All right, so we're just going to kind of, paint that in. So here you can see painted that ear in with a lot of black paint. And it looks, but then take your dry brush and just brush off the outside. And that's going to leave us with that nicely done inner area that we can go back and make it, tighter. We'll go back and tighten that up with a smaller brush. But right now what I'm trying to do is capture an overall evenness that, shows a lot of grime building up in the cracks. Let's see what we got here. And I'm using a very dry rag at this point because I feel like I'm getting kind of close here and I don't want to overdo it with removal. If I go back right now with a wet rag, I'll clean it off too much and I might end up cleaning off some weathering that I like. But I mean, honestly, hey, it's weathering, so how could that hurt, right? Different layers of good weathering should look good, right? So, all right. So you can see how the dry rag really kind of helps burnish out what's there, and you can get some grime down in those cracks. And remember, before you couldn't even see those features. You couldn't even see those little vents. And yeah, I can paint those out gray, and I can. Now it's nice as I can just do like a gray tint once this weathering dries, and it'll look really nice because it'll show that weathering up through the tint. Similar with here, I can use a gray tint, and now it'll have this weathering expressing up through it. Yeah, so anyway, let's keep going. Yeah, and like I said, I think the top should be really, really clean because, it's the part that's exposed to the sun and the rain and stuff. So I think if the very top of the head is just very, piercingly clean, it's that strange kind of cleanliness that comes from overuse, like if you've seen that on a vehicle, like a seat that's got a lot of miles where people have been sitting in the seat for a long time. And instead of being dirty and nasty, it's like super shiny because it's been just polished. So I feel like certain parts of a stormtrooper should be like that, where they're just like super shiny clean, because supposedly underneath it all is white material, the Duraplast. I've always assumed that it's kind of like a ceramic in a weird way, that like if you broke a stormtrooper helmet or plate, your camera, oh sorry, how do you have so many subs? How much to buy a gun and helmet? Oh, well, thank you so much for that. I'll have to figure that out. I need to set up a store for helmets and the blasters. So you guys have to be patient with me for the helmets and the blasters. How do I have so many subs? I don't know. Do I have a huge amount of subs? I don't know. I can tell you that my channel content is all original. You're not going to find any like movie clips or overly scripted stuff. This is all just stuff that I'm making, and I'm here as a source of information. So I'm not here to just show off what I'm doing. I'm here to offer yet another version of, and to do a weblog, of course. You know, I mean, I think any YouTube channel really at its best is a kind of weblog, you know, that ultimately captures a time and place, you know, and just considering how, you know, the world is always changing and everything's always changing. It's like, wow, you know, I'm doing some things that I think are worth sharing, you know. And I just felt like, you know, the work I'm just making on my own, like I can just share that as much as I want. So I'm like, yeah, like, you know, the world's changing and everything's changing. It's like the weblog can really capture a moment in time, you know, for my life too. And because you know sometimes studio could change, you know, maybe someday I'll move to a different studio and I won't be here anymore, and then you know this will be it, you know, guys, this will be the only video, this will be the evidence that's sometimes all that's left is your diary or your sketchbook or something, right? So in this case we're going crazy and we're just doing some kind of weblog, right, together here on YouTube. So yeah, I'm not gonna be like the best weathering. I'm not the worst either. I mean, dude, check this out. This is looking really nice. So I'll come back into the ears and I'll go back and you know do like another coat of black so that they're more crisp. But I really like how this. Really, my goal with weathering the back piece of the helmet, my huge goal is to get this line right here more defined in a believable way. And I think I nailed it on this one. Honestly, that's like my number one goal over anything else. I feel like other stuff I can always work in later, but I always really want to get this right. And that looks perfect. It's got a nice kind of brightness here where it's kind of a fake highlight, you know, which is perfect. Yeah, and then I got some really nice grime into those blaster marks. So now you can see how the paint is like has that scoring in it, kind of, which is this effect you can get by putting the enamel paint over acrylic. So if there's acrylic underneath, you spray it with enamel. The enamel will crawl, or orange peel, have an orange peel effect, but the whole thing still sets up fine. And then you can get this nice, like almost looks like lightning or a crackle pattern into it. So yeah, that's of course I was careful not to do too much of that, you know, and now I can see I could have actually just done way more. But I don't want to just totally wreck the paint job. But like this little area looks kind of cool. I don't know if you can see that crackle is in that feature, but it's kind of nice. So with a little bit of attention and with it later with like a small brush just to kind of pop up, probably put these, knock these back, these panels, knock them back with a clear gray, you know, it looked really nice, gray wash. All right, man. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. Ultimately, we didn't use any of the gray paint at all, or the brown paint. All we used was this house paint, which is very affordable. And here are the pieces that we ended up with today. Let's see, how can I show these off? Later, of course, I will snap these parts together. I think I'm going to go ahead and paint the interior separately as well, just because it'll dry better that way. And finally, put this helmet together. It'd be really fun to do that. So here we go. Here's the back piece. And you can see, like, if you go to the front of this video or if you've been here since the beginning, like, you know that this all looked just blank white at the beginning and it didn't really tell as much of a story, right? And I'm trying to capture the story of the scouts that were in the Battle of Endor and what it must have been like for them afterwards. And I'm also just entertained by the scout helmets that are just trashed that the Ewoks have that they've used for their as their drum kit. I'm just very entertained by that. So I really don't mind trying to represent the Scout Trooper in a kind of screen accurate way from Return of the Jedi. Um, but if you look at my other videos, you'll see I have a lot of different variations of the Scout Trooper. Wow, guys, whoo! I totally lost track of time on this, but here we are. Let me see if there's any final questions I can get to for you guys. Thank you so much. Um, oh yeah, I know Australia. I know it's far away. I visited Australia a while ago. I've been to Sydney, and I've been to Canberra because I went to college in Canberra at Australia University. I was there for 2 weeks, so I didn't go there for like a degree, but I was there as part of a uh, really fun trip where we were working with Aborigine artists and helping them produce their work in sculpture, in ceramics and metal. So that was really cool. Ah, hey, what's up? You're in Adelaide, South Australia. Nice. That's cool. Yeah, I went to Ernabella and I was there for 2 weeks. I guess was I there for like, I think I was in Australia for 2 months total because I was in Sydney just for like a day or two, like visiting and getting shown around. And then I was in Canberra at Australia University, or ANU, Australia National University, for 2 weeks. And then I spent the rest of the time at Ayers Rock. So I was in Ernabella for like a month and a half. Ernabella is really very remote Australia. And it was so beautiful out there. And like a desert, like very, very dry and very desolate. So, guys, thanks for joining on this uh, journey today where we did the weathering on these helmet pieces. Very happy with how this came out. So, good on us. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a great Saturday. And thanks for joining me on my channel and on this journey of making Star Wars helmets and Star Wars props. And, honestly, I also want to start doing things from some Marvel comics. Um, but it's a little strange. What I want to do is a character called Rom. And most people haven't heard of Rom, but I really want to do some helmets of that character. And I'd also like to make some Cylons from Battlestar Galactica. So who knows what we'll be making next? But half the time it'll probably be another Scout helmet. Master Chief, yeah. Yeah, I know. It'd be really cool to do a Master Chief. Yeah, so thanks, guys. Thanks for joining for this really simple demo. Honestly, this isn't, maybe it's just takes a little experience, but it's not too difficult to turn a very plain Jane helmet into something that tells way more of a story, that has way more going on. So, yeah, and then once the lenses pop back in this bad boy and I get the interior knocked out, it'll be a nice piece that I can maybe wear for Halloween. All right, bro. Catch you later. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.